Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to my podcast, Rewire to Inspire. I am your host, Jessie Brown, and I am so excited to be jumping on the microphone with you all for episode number 157. I hope you all enjoyed my latest episode, number 156. Are you giving too much or too little of yourself? Happy September. I recognize on my last episode, I wished you guys all a happy September, and it was only August 31st. So we are now officially in September. I have been going for runs the last couple of mornings, and that crisp fall weather is in the air. And as much as I'm kind of mourning the loss of summer and moving into a different season, I also know that that is just how life flows. And by enjoying and embracing each and every season, there's just beauty that can be found. And so I have truly been loving it. So I hope that you guys have been loving it as well. For today's episode, 157, I am quite literally right now, while doing this podcast, going off of the theme of what we're going to talk about today. And I want you to ask yourself, when is the last time that you can remember that you didn't want to do something, but you knew that you needed to do it? You knew that you would thank yourself more later for doing said thing. Because here's the thing, we're always going to have things in life that we don't want to do, but that we need to do. My question for you is, what is your relationship with those situations? When you are faced with a time where you do not want to do something, but you know you need to do something, how do you show up? Are you someone who kind of pushes things aside, leaves them till the last minute until there's not enough necessity that you have to get it done? Or are you someone who is kind of proactive in doing things? But it's inevitable that there's always going to be times when we don't want to do something, but we know that we need to do it. Today's podcast episode today is exactly that for me. I have been sitting here for the last 2 days trying to think of what I wanted to talk to you guys about this week. And as much as I had a couple different ideas, they just weren't flowing properly. I quite literally tried 3 times yesterday to record an episode, and I canned it like 5 minutes in because I was just not feeling what I was talking about. And I'm someone that if I do not feel like I am producing quality content that I feel I would want to listen to, or that I feel is actually beneficial, I'm not going to follow through with it. And so I was left sitting here like, gosh, I really don't want to record today. I'm really tired. My creative mind is kind of offline. I'm really like I just said that again. See, great example. I'm kind of foggy brained, and I'm like, why don't I talk about exactly that? Talking about the benefits of showing up, especially when we don't want to, and how that can serve your life. Because again, it's inevitable that these instances are going to happen. And it's what we do in those instances that are going to make all the difference. And by choosing to show up, and by me sharing these 5 benefits with you, I hope that when you get to those moments, you're able to say, hey, I want to be able to push through this pain, even though it's uncomfortable. And even though I don't want to do it, I know that I should do it. And I know that my future self is going to thank me for it. And so that is exactly the first point that I had wrote down of the benefits of showing up when you don't want to. Your future self will always, always, always thank you for showing up and doing the things in the moment that you don't want to do. Because when we don't take action of something that has to get done, it's inevitable that that's just going to be sitting there. And so when we do things that our future self will thank us for, we're setting ourselves up for success. I know that if I did not record today's episodes today, there was going to be a part of me later in the week that's like, oh, I wish I would have done that. And our future self almost gets mad at our present self because we're not showing up. And I know that there's times when, yes, things happen, things surface, we're not in the mood. However, again, it's so important that we build a relationship with pushing through that. And so that is the first benefit that I had wrote down, is your future self is going to thank you so much more for doing the things that you don't want to do than by leaving them to the last minute, by pushing them. And often when we do that, when we push things away that we don't want to do, but we know we need to do, we're often not doing our best work because we're doing it very last minute and crunching it. And so that is the first benefit of showing up when you don't want to, is that your future self will almost always thank you for doing that thing. Sometimes it's about getting out of our present mind and thinking about our future self. And that can give us enough fuel to begin to show up differently than imagining ourselves later in the week or later in life having to do that thing that we could be doing in the moment. The second benefit that I had wrote down is it makes you proud of yourself. I know that when I finish recording these episodes, I am going to feel better about myself than I did before. Think about a time when you said you were going to do something and you didn't do it. It weighs on us. It sits in our mind and we start to feel crummy about ourselves. A good example of this is going to the gym. When we say we're going to go to the gym and we don't go to the gym, there's a part of us that almost takes that hit. Because what's happening is we're telling ourselves we're going to do something, and when we don't show up, we're breaking promises with ourselves. There is no worse person to break a promise to than yourself, because you're showing yourself that you can't trust your words. Your actions do not meet what your thoughts and intentions are. And so knowing that inevitably when you show up when you don't want to, especially when you don't want to, think of how much more proud you're going to be of yourself for grinding through that, for persevering through that, and for showing up when you don't want to. It's a lot easier to show up when we're in the mood and when we're in flow and when we're in creativity and when we feel that momentum. It's so much harder when we're not in that energetic space. And so think about how much more proud you'll be of yourself for doing the things you don't want to do. This also came up for me this morning. I did not want to go for a run this morning at all. But I had promised myself that over the next 14 days, I was going to run 30 kilometers. That was a promise I made to myself. And I know that if I don't hit a certain benchmark every single day, I'm not going to meet that goal unless at the end of it, I end up having to run a half of a marathon because I wasn't showing up consecutively leading up to that. And so I knew that if I didn't show up today, A, my future self was going to beat me up. But B, I knew I was going to thank myself so much more for showing up. And so those are two huge things that I want you to remember when you don't want to do something. Number 3, the third benefit, it frees up space and capacity for you to be more present, AKA it clears your mind. We all have a different relationship with standards with ourselves. However, I know that I'm someone that when I make a promise to myself and I don't follow through with it, or when I know I have outstanding tasks, I know that I didn't complete something, and I go and I do something else, it weighs heavily in the back of my mind. So for example, I am going today to a washer tournament, which I'm super, super excited about. But I know that I will not be able to be the best version of Jessie and be present and have fun unless I accomplish this. There will be a part of me the whole time that I'm there that can't be present because I'm just thinking I should have recorded my podcast episodes. I shouldn't be here. I should go and I should be productive. And so it doesn't really allow us to be present when we have those subconscious stressors playing in the back of our mind. And so I think that when we can hold that awareness for ourselves, and again, future pace, I think so much of this is about looking forward and bringing it back to our present self. I know that if I wasn't to show up, I wasn't going to be able to be present, as I just mentioned. So whatever that thing is for you, I want you to ask yourself, okay, if I don't do this thing right now, or if I don't show up, is this going to be weighing on my mind? Am I going to be beating myself up? I know for me, that's also a big trigger when my self-esteem starts to take a hit. When I don't show up and I'm not productive, my self-esteem almost always feels like crap. Because when we break promises with ourselves, again, think of it like a friend who keeps breaking promises to you. Eventually, you start to resent that friend and start to not have trust with them. Imagine that energetically in our own body. If we keep telling ourselves we're going to do something, we keep, reiterating these promises we're going to do, and then we don't do them, we start to subconsciously villainize ourselves. And so by doing the things we don't want to do, you're freeing up that space in your mind to have more capacity to be present, and you're not as anxious about the things that you know that you need to get done. Number 4, and I know I'm flying through these, you guys, but I really just want to hone in on this concept specifically and just how important these things are, because I know how easy it is to just push things aside and brush things aside and say, I'll do it later. But there's so many benefits of taking action. And the thing is, that's interesting is once we take action, it's so much easier to keep that momentum going. Because I told myself I didn't want to go for a run, and then I did, it gave me more momentum and necessity to keep that going, to keep it flowing. Whereas if we don't get that ignition started in the first place, it's a lot easier to stay stagnant. So also don't lessen the effects of how one step can lead into more action. Number 4, it avoids the negative byproducts of not showing up. So here's the thing. Because as I just mentioned, when I went for that run, it was a really positive ripple effect of leading into other things that I wanted to do. The same rings true when we're not showing up and when we're not doing things. That leaks into a negative trickle effect. So for example, you don't get something done that rolls into the next day. Well, what were the things in that day that needed to get done that now can't get done because you have to do something else? And then how is that pouring into the next day? And how all these things begin to kind of pile on top of each other and start to feel impossible. Everything has a ripple effect. Everything has a domino effect. Everything has a byproduct of the next thing in life. And so if I were to not show up and do this, there's a part of me that's going to have to either do this tomorrow or the next day for this to release on Tuesday. And so I know that there's other things that I need to get done tomorrow and Monday. And so if I don't do this today, I am now taking up capacity of my other 2 days when I could have just got it done today and I have time and I have, my content ready to go. I just wasn't jumping on the microphone. And so I want you to think of yourself, ask yourself, what is going to be the negative ripple effect of me not taking action of this? Is it going to be an internal byproduct? Is it going to be an external byproduct? If it's at work, is this going to affect other people? And I think that having that awareness and holding that awareness allows us to think outside of just the situational thing and allows us to paint a bigger picture of, okay, yeah, I don't want to do this, but I definitely don't want to do this, that, and the other thing all on the same day. And so I know if I take just a chunk of the work that I need to do today, there's a little bit less tomorrow. The thing is all these things start to pile on top of each other. And then when things become too much, then we definitely want to avoid it. This is largely me with doing laundry, which I know I talk about all the time on here, but I hate doing laundry. And so I push it and I push it and I push it. And then I get these massive loads of laundry and I'm like, oh my God, Jessie, imagine if you had just folded what was in the dryer and put it away every single time you did a load of laundry instead of shoving it in a corner and then having to take 2 hours to do your laundry. We all have an area in which we don't like to show up. But we know that when we do show up, there's almost always a positive byproduct of that. So insert thing here for your life that you have kind of been struggling to show up in, but knowing that if you do, that could have a really positive ripple effect in your life. Okay, the last one, number 5. And again, this is kind of a byproduct of all the things that I've shared, and I've touched on this very, very lightly, but it can show your mind that you can do hard things. It shows your mind that you are the type of person that shows up even when you don't want to. Again, we all have a different relationship of showing up when we don't want to. We all have a different relationship of pushing through pain and pushing through necessity and having strong discipline and having perseverance and having grit. We all have a different relationship with that. But when you can begin to show your mind that you are the type of person to do something even when you don't want to, your mind begins to form an identity around that. I know that I'm the type of person that will not miss. I will not miss producing 2 episodes a week unless something absolutely absurd, out of my control happens in my life. I will not miss uploading 2 episodes a week. I have that necessity behind me. You need to ask yourself, what is the necessity that you need to provide to yourself to show your mind that you can do hard things? All of this is about relationships with ourselves. Relationships about how we show up, relationships with our work, relationships with discipline, relationships with our standards. And if you are telling yourself that I'll figure it out later, you're telling yourself that you are the type of person that procrastinates. You are the type of person that will figure it out later. What if you rewrote that script and instead began to tell yourself, I'm the type of person that does things even when I don't want to? And you begin to form an identity around that. And this takes time, but it starts with doing one small actionable task that you in hindsight don't want to do, but know that you will thank yourself almost every single time for doing. One sentence that I encourage you to ask yourself in regards to this is, I don't want to do blank, but if I do blank, I will feel blank. So I do not want to record today, but I know that if I do record today, I will feel so much more present. I will feel so much more proud. When we can frame it in that way, it almost excites us in a way of, okay, if I just toughen through and I just get it done, I'm going to thank myself so much more. And it just gives us that little necessity to show up differently. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I know it was a quicker one, but I really just wanted to come on here and hone in on the importance of showing up when you don't want to and leading by example for myself today. And I'm so much more proud of myself for recording this episode than how I felt 20 minutes ago, sitting in my office contemplating, okay, well, how am I going to do this tomorrow? When am I going to squeeze this in? And stressing myself out versus I have the time and the capacity right now. Why don't I just do it and get it over with? Knowing that I will thank myself so much more for doing so. So thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's episode. I look forward to chatting with you all on Thursday. Again, happy September, and I look forward to chatting with you then. Bye, you guys.